I think most people knew that Stolly decks would be getting better as soon as they saw Floodgate. And then when the new pack came out, they saw Draining Shield. They figured that it'd be super hard to deal with and would do really well. I don't think people expected Wall of Disruption to be as good as it is though. Like all of these trap cards that I have in that extra deck you see on the side, they stall just too well overall. Like some of them might seem like they don't really synergize, but they actually do. Like all of them function together really well to prevent the enemy from actually even being able to do anything. So I'm sitting at 14 wins and 2 losses. I only lost once with the mill deck. I think I did 6 games with it. I lost 1 to Cyber Angels after my rank up to Legend. Then I got 5 wins in a row, got promoted. Let's start those replays. So I didn't actually even need the ability in pretty much every single one of these duels. So maybe I could try a different ability. I know Destiny Draw would be pretty good too. Like before these like Wall of Disruption and Draining Shield were in here, people were using like Apples plus Enchanted Javelin, which works pretty well. Like a lot of their duels would be extremely close. But in these duels, there's only one duel that was close, and he actually ended up winning because of anti-magic arrows. So here we see he's running a bunch of tributes, which had me worried because, well, that should do pretty well versus what I'm trying to do. So he's kind of lucky there to have his 2 soul exchanges not be the ones that were milled. Like there, I could have prevented an attack, but I'm like, well, I might as well just save my cards. Like I could just negate his attack and gain health. Maybe I should have, just in case, but I wasn't that worried about it. Like here, Wall of Disruption, it lowers them by 2,400 each. So he has 2 dead cards on the field. But he does have Tetron, which basically gets to kill like all of your spell and trap cards by removing 1 counter per turn. Alright, so if you're going to use Draining Shield plus Massive Morph, you're going to want to use the Draining Shield first, and then chain Massive Morph to it, so they get the boosted attack before Draining Shield goes off. I just did that because I had so many cards in my hand, and I knew he'd have more tributes, so I wanted to have a lot of extra stuff available. Of course, I chained the Windstorm to prevent him from even trying to get 1800 off. So we have another Wall of Disruption, and he's just going to be killing my trap cards anyways, so I chained both. Of course I did that exact same process last time. Here he makes a huge mistake and mills himself some more, which was my win condition. But yeah, if you're going to use Draining Shield and you want to use another one of your trap cards alongside it, you're going to want to use like the Draining Shield at the correct time. So like if you want to use Wall of Disruption, you're gonna want Wall of Disruption to go off. I mean, you're gonna want it to go off second, so you're gonna want to use it first, and then chain Grinding Shield to it. Otherwise, you'd gain nothing from it. Yeah, this deck just stalls and mills. So here he's running fusions. There is like, well, I'd rather not have him have like a huge amount of dragons, because then he could do some piercing damage. And I still sent out my monsters because, well, I do want to mill him in a reasonable amount of time if possible. Plus if he summons a Dark Paladin instead, then that'd be pretty good for me. But nope, he goes for the Swordsman. So there I lower him just a bit so I'm not in danger of dying. Like, I'm only gonna take 600 damage from him killing the Worms. So I was fine with this at this point. If he kills my 2 monsters, he's gonna be at 0 cards. He's like, alright, I gotta go for it. And he pretty much has to. But he attacks with Legion, so I just massive morph his other monster. So he's not able to attack directly. So yeah, that's how Massive Morph and Wall of Disruption can still work together. As long as they don't have piercing damage on the monster you Massive Morph, they're not going to be able to use it the way they want it to be used. And you could use the Draining Shield to get a ton of extra life points off of that monster. Yeah, it's pretty much like I've been playing without an ability, because they haven't been doing enough damage to me. So every time they deal 2000 damage, I'm able to draw the same card, but it gets... well, so I draw a card, but instead of getting 1 copy of it, I get 2. So it's Red Eyes, and of course he's gonna mill himself ridiculously fast. He's down to only 7 cards. Mill has always been a good counter. And of course I use Massive Morph to prevent direct attacks. He decides to mill himself some more. That was a very bad idea. So he gets milled 3 more. And it's pretty much over for him. So Wall of Disruption, he has 3 monsters, minus 2,400 for each of his face-up attack monsters. And he's out of cards. I don't know why he kept using cards like drawing cards after he already saw I was mill. It just makes him lose faster. It is a counter deck though, so it's expected that he'd lose. Oh oops, did I already do this one? Is this the Red Eyes? Yeah, it looks like it's the same guy. Let's make sure. Yeah, I'm really sure this is the same guy. I better just exit this one. Yeah, it definitely is. Mill already was super consistent, but with this, like, your enemy's not even able to really do anything if they're not running anti-trap cards, or maybe something like anti-magic arrows. So he's got Floodgate, Windstorm, and Floodgate. So it looks like he's the same deck as me, or at least that's what I'm thinking. Then he flips these two cards, and he has a card guard? Like, what is this guy even going for? So I just flip my Wall of Disruption, lower all three of his monsters by 2,400 each, and he's in a bad spot. But then he sends out a Nanta, so he gets to destroy one card per turn on the field. And he destroys a Worm. He probably did it expecting it to be another Hero Shadow Scout, potentially. Or maybe a Jowls. Here it was pointless for me to chain it, but I did it anyways. But it did leave him with 0 defense, which doesn't really matter to me. So I saved that Massive Morph, just so he doesn't blow up one of his own cards. So it's just kind of a bait card. Pretty sure I'm going for like the same kind of thing right here. Oh no wait, actually I use it early. Just to prevent him from doing anything. He finally destroys one of his own cards. I finally get to use extra. But it's at a point where it doesn't even matter. And like getting 2 of a trap card would have been better. But there I just gain a ton of life. I could have used Wall of Disruption. It really didn't matter what I chose to do. Basically, the entire duel, they don't get to do anything that they want to do. They just constantly get denied and make their monsters unable to do what they're trying to do. It's just a bit too effective for what it's doing. But as more people start using trap heavy decks, like the meta should shift towards more anti-trap cards. So I'm always flipping my own heroes, Shadow Scout, just in case. Like I have the cards to defend him, so why not? He might get destroyed while face down, and that would suck. So some of these decks are kind of weird. But his Dark Magician got lowered to 100 attack. And all of his other stuff gets lowered to 0. So he just gives up. That's this is a pretty crazy card. So when an opponent's monster declares an attack, so you have to wait until they're actually declaring an attack to use this card. So cards like Sergeant Electro, Phoenix, just basically any card that can either lock down trap cards or send them away or destroy them before the battle phase. They're gonna be really good versus decks like this. And since Wall of Disruption's gonna be good in pretty much every deck, I don't see a reason why the meta wouldn't shift towards cards that counter traps like this. So control decks, Phoenix decks, other kinds of decks that deal with back row. That like, or you could do like red eyes with like maybe 2, maybe even 3 anti-magic arrows. I don't know if it'll be that desperate. Maybe it will be. Maybe you'll have to have mixed decks where you're using some utility cards face down, or at least putting cards in defense mode instead of swarming the field with 3 attack mode monsters. There might also be some decks like Venus using OTC plus Red Lotus that could come back. The cards that use their monsters like they're super expendable and can remove their own field efficiently, I feel like they could start making a huge comeback. And then cards like Order to Smash, like getting rid of 2 trap cards using one of those shine balls would be pretty good. It definitely like lower the amount of like stally cards being used. Of course, Floodgate's still annoying. You send out Venus, get it flip face down. That's no good. But enemy controller can tribute your monsters, so that'll help a bit. And then you can also tribute your flipped face down dude for like Red Lotus or something. So this card will, like, if you're using it preemptively, you could play around anti-magic arrows. You could use this to like flip dangerous monsters face down, so they can't even use the anti-magic arrows in the first place. And then of course this is nice for Cyber Angels. Or like you flip him into attack mode, just tribute him to steal one of their monsters for a turn, stall him for an entire turn. Yeah, overall this deck's really good. And it doesn't matter that this gives them extra attack as long as they're not piercing. And it boosts the amount you can get from this. You don't always have to do that, but it could be helpful to have a nice buffer of life points. Pretty OP. You're gonna potentially lower 3 monsters by 2,400 each. That's actually insane. They become worthless. So like 2 Floodgate plus Wall of Disruption plus Massamorph. Like that's 8 cards that makes their monsters become worthless. It's pretty ridiculous. And their effects just last until they do something to counter it. Yeah, that's all I want to talk about for this deck for now.